So let's just dive right in. What if I told you that the answers to some of life's biggest hurdles, getting in shape, making more money, actually feeling good about yourself, weren't complicated at all? What if they were, well, easy actually? That's the whole idea we're digging into today. This a provocative thought that maybe, just maybe, we fail because we're so busy looking for complex solutions that we completely ignore the simple stuff that actually works.
And right off the bat, you get a feel for the tone here. It's direct, maybe a little cynical, but it's brutally honest. This isn't about some fancy life hack. It's about looking at a basic truth and then, just doing something about it.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the main idea, the easy actually premise. Then we'll talk about why just showing up is way better than having the perfect plan. After that, we'll get into how our brains are really bad at understanding difficulty, how to rewire your own self-image, and then we'll wrap it all up with a really simple call to action. All right, first up, the easy actually premise. This is all about why we tie ourselves in knots trying to solve problems that, when you get right down to it, are pretty straightforward. So this is the most important takeaway right here. Most of us fail at big goals not because the how-to is some big secret, but because we skip the boring, simple, fundamental steps. We're always looking for that shortcut, that perfectly optimized secret, and by doing that, we totally miss the point. And that brings us perfectly to our second point, consistency over optimization. The idea here is that a good enough plan that you actually stick to is 1,000,000 times better than a perfect one that you quit after a week. Now take a look at this because it lays it out so clearly. You've got the optimal person. They go all in, 6 days a week, perfect routine, but then life happens. They get busy, they stop for a month, and they're trapped in this endless cycle of starting and stopping. Now compare that to the consistent person. They only work out twice a week. Their routine is just something they found on Google. But, and this is the key, they never miss. Their progress is slow, sure, but it never, ever goes backward. So who do you think actually gets ahead in the long run? And this chart shows you exactly why. It's just the law of diminishing returns. Those first few sets you do for a muscle, they give you a huge bang for your buck, a massive return on your effort. But as you keep adding more and more sets, you get less and less back for each one. That optimal plan is chasing those teeny tiny extra gains, but it costs a ton of time and energy, which is exactly why people burn out. So consistency wins because it builds a habit, a foundation. Once you're just doing the thing, you naturally start getting curious. You start learning more. You figure out on your own that you need to lift a little heavier over time. You look up a new recipe. You're always inching forward, and that is literally the only thing that matters. The one thing you have to avoid at all costs is going backward. Okay, now let's talk about something that really messes with all of us, the deceptive exponential curve. This is all about our complete inability as humans to really grasp how something that starts out easy can become impossibly hard over time. To make this real, just look at this number, $1 single of debt. At a 2% daily interest rate, it explodes into over $1,800 in just 1 year. That's the terrifying, sneaky power of an exponential curve. It seems like nothing at first, and then suddenly, bam, it's completely out of control. And guess what? The same exact thing happens with dieting. That small calorie deficit feels like a piece of cake in week 1, but by week 5, it's getting really hard. You're dreaming about pizza. By week 10, the hunger feels like it's growing exponentially, and that's where most people give up, because they never saw that massive spike in difficulty coming. But you can beat this curve. You just have to be smart about it. Use a few simple tricks. Avoid what the source material hilariously calls protein slop. Those super processed foods that are engineered to make you eat the whole bag, even if they have some protein in them. Instead, eat high-volume foods, stuff that's mostly water, like fruits and veggies, that fill you up. Track what you're eating, limit how often you eat, and, this is the big one, just be patient. The more you obsess, the faster you fail. Okay, we've talked a lot about external actions, but what's going on in our heads? That brings us to section 4, reprogramming your brain. This whole idea is based on the fact that your self-image, it's not set in stone. It's something you can actually choose to change. So the core concept is something called psycho-cybernetics. It basically says your brain works like a thermostat for your self-image. It will always try to keep your actions in line with how you see yourself. So if you secretly believe you're a failure, your brain will literally, unconsciously, guide you towards failure, just to prove that belief right. And this is how we get trapped. It's a vicious cycle.
You start with a negative thought, like, I can't be attractive. That belief makes you not even want to try, so you avoid social situations. And because you're avoiding them, you gather evidence that supports your belief, like, see, no one ever talks to me. Which, of course, just makes that original belief even stronger. It's a total self-fulfilling prophecy.
So how do you break out? You have to hijack the system. First, you have to consciously reject the thought. Call it out for what it is, faulty logic. Then you visualize success, and I mean really visualize it over and over again. Feel what it's like to be confident in that social situation. What you're doing is tricking your brain into thinking you've already done it, which makes it way less scary to actually try. And once you start trying, you get new, positive evidence that starts to overwrite that old negative programming.
And all of this leads us to our final and maybe the most important section of all. It's the idea of just doing more life. It's what ties everything we've talked about together into one simple philosophy. This analogy is just perfect. You can watch 1,000 YouTube videos on how to live a good life, you can read all the books, but it's just like trying to learn how to tie a tie by watching someone else. It doesn't click. You have to actually get your hands on it and do it yourself, mess it up and do it again. The only way to get better at living is by living. And doing more life doesn't have to be some grand, epic adventure. It's about small things, flossing your teeth and putting on sunscreen. That's you making a decision to take care of the person you're going to be in 20 years. Keeping a memoir isn't just writing in a diary. It's creating proof that you've done things, that you've lived. And doing little impossible things, like running just a little bit farther than you thought you could, that proves to your brain that its own limits are wrong.
And so we're going to end with this question. It takes that huge, overwhelming question, what should I do with my life? And it shrinks it down into something you can actually answer right now. Instead of waiting for some grand purpose to fall out of the sky, the philosophy is simple. Just engage with the world. Be consistent. Understand how your own brain works against you sometimes, and just choose to act. Because getting what you want, it might just be